My 16-year-old started cussing last year, so I kind of regret this, but you've been advised. Hey y'all, I'm Jenn. I'm from Oakland, and I'm an androgynous, black, lesbian feminist, and a lover of all black people.
This is Daren. I'm an asexual novelist, researcher, and bona fide comic book fanatic from the widest part of Southern California.
Orange County. We're queer millennials with 3 kids and nearly 20 years of marriage.
This is a podcast about the realities of blackness, adulting, and relationships.
This is That Black Couple. Hello.
Hello.
Hi.
Hi.
I think it's funny that we start every episode by saying hello to each other and we're sitting right next to each other.
Yeah, like we just walked in and we're like, hi,
how are you? Like we didn't plan this and like talk about it and then walk downstairs into our own basement, put on our earphones, turn on the laptop, and then put our microphones up and then look at each other and say hello. Mm-hmm. But it's because we're saying hello to our audience.
Yes.
We're saying hello listeners. Hello everyone. It's really interesting. I've been realizing lately people are actually listening.
You're realizing just now that people actually listen.
Like I realized it before. I realized it before, theoretically. But recently people have been like, oh yeah, remember on the podcast when you said, and it's what I said like just 2 days ago. And I'm like, wait a minute. You listen regularly. You wait till a new episode comes on and when you get the alert, you're excited. Mm-hmm. That's interesting.
I mean, it's easy to sit here in this basement where it's just us and we look out and there's just like a wall in front of us. It's our
beautiful basement.
You know, and
that I decorated.
And my son's turtle
with all of my stuff from TJ Maxx
over there, and
yeah,
to not really realize that
people
when we
talk
into the mics, it goes to people's ears.
So I guess I want to say thank y'all for listening.
Yes,
thank y'all for listening, and also like email us, right? No, just me?
No, not that you. Yeah, email us.
thatblkcouple@gmail.com.
Yeah.
thatblkcouple@gmail.com. Like, email us. Tell us what episodes you like. Like, give us some feedback.
Say, talk about this.
Yeah, we'd love to know what y'all like and don't like.
Say, we love you. That's great. I love
but
to
be
hear
nice,
that too.
though. And also encourage Daren to go outside in your emails. Specifically, write them to Daren. Dear Daren, space. I would like it if you would go outside so that you all would do live episodes. I would definitely attend. Right, Daren?
If that's what y'all want.
Exactly.
Put it in the email. It's
exactly. Fine. I'm just saying. Anyway, this is just hypotheticals. We just spitballing here. It could be anything. But hypothetically, if you wanted to send that to Daren, I would not be mad. thatblkcouple@gmail.com. Anyway, it's season 6, episode 6. Are y'all ready for this?
I know I'm ready.
I hope so. We're a little behind because the world has been on fire. We've been working tirelessly to raise our children and to continue to human and adult despite the ongoing attacks against Gazans and Palestinians by the Israel Armed Forces. And we are trying to person, right? Mm-hmm. We are a household that is very pro-Palestine. We are pro-Gaza. We are pro-ceasefire. And, working on behalf of students, sometimes that puts things on delay. And as y'all know, if you've been listening for a long time, when life happens, the podcast has to be put on hold.
Yes, unfortunately.
Unfortunately, we are not a business and we are not a brand. We are human beings. And so we have to listen to our bodies and we have to honor that. So that is what is going on in the world. We hope that everyone is being safe and taking care of themselves, that everyone is warm and watered. We hope that folks, if you are organizing in places where you are covered and you are being taught the tactics that you need to strategize and survive in this moment. We are both, very much politically oriented and radically oriented. This episode is about something different. So season 6, episode 6 is about Black autism. Mm-hmm. And the reason why we're behind is because we really were supposed to cover this earlier on in April.
Yeah, because April is Autism Acceptance Month. And World Autism Day was on April 2nd.
April 2nd. So, and that's okay. Listen, when you the party, you never late to the party.
Listen.
Never late to the party. Never late to the party. This is episode 6, season 6 of That Black Couple. We are talking about being Black and autistic. We are drinking water and kombucha. That's it. And taking vitamins. That's what we're doing, Daren.
And that's all.
Yes, and smoking weed.
Nothing else?
Yes. Have a seat.
That's the approved list?
Yes.
Okay.
This is That Black Couple. I'm Jenn.
I'm Daren.
And before we get started, please make sure you follow us on Twitter, not whatever letter they're going by today, and Instagram at That BLK Couple, on Facebook at That Black Couple, and look us up on the internets at www.thatblackcouple.com.
And if you're listening to us right now, that means you found us on one of the many podcast platforms where we can be found. And guess what? We can be found on all of them. So if you're looking for us, you can find us on Apple Podcasts. You can find us on Google Podcasts. You can find us on Spotify, Amazon Music, Audible, Stitcher, SoundCloud, Pandora. All of them. If you're looking for us, you'll find us. You can always just type our name into Google and it'll pop up too. Even more importantly, you can find us on Patreon. So if you really, really want to be a supporter, if you want to back the work that we're doing, that as we've just outlined is really like a labor of love for us, go to that patreon.com and subscribe. All right, let's go.
Let's go.
So we're talking about being Black and autistic.
Yeah.
And I'll start things off by saying neither one of us are autistic.
Neither one of us.
Neither one of us are diagnosed autistic.
No, we are not.
So we are definitely not coming into this episode saying, from my personal
No,
experience,
not at all.
We're definitely not trying to do that.
No.
We are not professing to be autism experts.
No.
However, I do think this is an important topic for us to talk about. And
yes.
For the Black community to talk about and to be more aware of.
Yes. I'm neurodivergent in other ways. I have CTPSD and depression and anxiety that I medicate for. And again, I want to reiterate, I am not autistic. I'm not self-diagnosed, nor am I professionally diagnosed. So I want people to understand that when we use the term neurodivergent during this conversation, we're referring to the umbrella of neurodivergence. Mm-hmm. But when we're talking about autism, we're specifically talking about autism.
And there's a lot going on with autism today, but when we were discussing episode topics and this one came up, I just thought this would be a really good thing to talk about. And one of the things for me, as we were planning what we were going to talk about, was I've been watching the show called Love on the Spectrum, mm-hmm. which airs on Netflix. And it's a really great, like, heartwarming, like, unassuming show. It treats all of the people on the show just with the most loving care and gentle touch. The whole concept of the show is it's autistic adults who want to find love. Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. That's the whole concept of the show. Yeah. And all you do is you watch them and you see some of their personal life. You see them going out on dates. You see them going to, all types of events. You see them traveling, right? And I love the show because it's just an insight to life as autistic people, and it presents them not as, their condition, as a lot of times people are always kind of examined as, but just shows them as people. It shows their joys. It shows their sadness. It shows their insecurities. It shows,
their humanity,
their brilliance. It's just a great thing to sit down and watch, especially as the world feels like it's burning. Yeah. It's just a great show to watch. And specifically this second season that came out, there is a Black lesbian girl named Journey who was on the show, which number one was huge because the first season was all white people. But they were also very
heteronormative,
cis, very heteronormative, right? Yeah. And now we have this Black lesbian girl. And I love just the idea of her being there, of saying there's a Black lesbian autistic girl. Yeah. Right. And she wants to go out into the world and she wants to find love. And so it shows, like, again, her humanity as a person, as it talks about her, coming to terms with being a lesbian. And I feel like it's one of those things where people can identify because the way she was just like, I just don't like guys. I never have. Yeah. But, like, it's not like, oh, I had this whole journey. It's like, I just don't like guys. Yeah. And, like, her dad tried to get her out on a double date with some other boy and lied and said it wasn't a double date. Oh, and so you get to see, like, the family banter, right? And so it's like, again, it's just a great humanizing experience to watch. Yeah. And it was also great to see as a Black autistic girl. And I think she was actually she was in Chicago. Yeah. It was great to see she lived there and she had this great family support network, and you saw them, like, helping her pick out clothes to go on a date and doing her hair. Right?
Oh, I love that.
Again, like, all, like, not saying let's focus on the fact that you're autistic, but let's just look at you as a human being who's looking for love.
Yeah.
Just like so many other people on this planet.
Yeah. I mean, I've seen you watching it, and I don't watch shows like that, so I haven't sat down. You watch a lot more shows than me, so I haven't sat down to watch it. But the times that I have sat down, it has been interesting because I've appreciated like the ways that they allow the characters, the folks on the show, to interact in very natural and organic ways. It doesn't feel put on. It doesn't feel sketch. Like, you know how like a sketch comedy or a sketch show, it's like it's semi scripted. And this is clearly, to me, these are just folks trying to figure out how to navigate their lives.
Yeah. I mean, there's definitely some setup, right? So they're definitely helping them to find people. They're putting them in positions and helping them to like find dates and stuff. But you can tell that outside of that, it's really just let's just see what happens. The other thing I will say, just to quickly point out, that was really interesting about Journey, specifically, is she was 18 years old on the show, but she had only been diagnosed as autistic for a year.
Wow.
Right. And this is, I think, where we really get to part of the heart of what we want to talk about today is that a lot of times people that are autistic don't receive their diagnoses, especially if they're non-white, until much later on in life, a lot of times into adulthood, right? Which makes you realize that they've lived their whole life, right, neurodivergent, and not really having a specific way to communicate what that means to people, not getting the support and care that would likely be really helpful in a lot of different situations. Right. Specifically, again, watching the show is they actually bring an expert on there, and they get to ask the expert, like, okay, I know some of my social issues is I might talk too much, or I might not always pick up on the cues that someone else, right? And so the expert really kind of walking them through and say, hey, when you go on a date, you might want to pull out the chair. You might want to ask someone what their interests are, right? And it's interesting to see that they struggle with things like that, and it's not because they don't care, right? A lot of times people say, oh, you didn't even ask me anything, you don't give a shit about me, right? And it's not that they don't care, it's just it's an understanding of social relationships. Absolutely. Right. And again, that's one of those things I think with being autistic, and especially not getting diagnosed until later on in life, right? You've been navigating the world in a way, and likely being misunderstood a lot of the time. And how difficult is that?
Yeah, I mean, this is where I think this is the point of similarity, I think, for me as a neurodivergent person. And I'm sure, I sometimes feel that there are other things that I'm not diagnosed with as of yet. But what I've also learned in researching my own diagnoses is that there are a lot of symptoms that are similar across diagnoses. So, I've dated people who have ADHD. I, have my own daily walk with anxiety and depression that I medicate for. I've interacted with folks who have bipolar 1 or bipolar 2 in relationships. And I've been in community with and dated folks who are diagnosed or not diagnosed as autistic or self-diagnosed as autistic. And what I've found is that this feeling of not being quite understood, or these feelings of needing to explain ourselves, or talking more, because the more we talk, the more we can help give people clarity, or and I'm also a person who was diagnosed with my neurodivergences later in life. I was in my 30s, right? And so you spend a whole life, learning to people please and learning to acclimate to these societal conditions that you really don't understand. Like, you're like, I don't understand what this subtext is in this room right now, but I think that other people do. So I'm just going to pay attention to what they do and try and copy. Like, you've seen me do this where I'm like, I have no idea what everyone's talking about, and I think there's a secret in here, but I'm just going to sit here and wait until someone tells me, because I don't get it. And everyone's like, you definitely get it. And it's like, I don't get it at all. I don't know what's happening. I think it could be this, but I don't actually know.
I can't even count the times that I've had to just sit you down and say, let me explain what just happened in that room.
And then some people will make you feel bad about that, right? So I want to get back to what brings me also to the episode. Is I was posting online about the differences between a friend and someone who's friendly, right? And this is something I had to learn also as a neurodivergent person, that, in a lot of instances in my life, I thought if people were friendly to me, that they could be a potential friend, right? Like, I'm very straightforward. What you see with me is what you get. There's not deception here. Like, I don't have the energy to pretend to be something that I'm not. And so I've always been kind of shocked when people do that to me. So when people hide their real intentions or have ulterior motives, I'm usually taken aback. And so I was just posting about how hard it is for people when they think everyone is their friend. And I was speaking from experience, having my heart broken tons of times, thinking somebody was my friend, thinking somebody had my back, thinking somebody was going to look out for me, and then realizing, oh, I got the message incorrect. I didn't understand that. And underneath my post on Instagram, someone came up and said, I'm an autistic person, and this is really hard for me. It's really hard for me to understand social cues around friendliness. People say I'm unfriendly because I don't acclimate to these things. And it really resonated with me. It made me remember when I was younger, when I was a kid, people would always call me mean. They would say, you're so mean, you're so mean, you're so angry. Look at your face. You just look so angry. And I would look in the mirror. I would spend so much time looking in the mirror at my own face. Like, what are they seeing? I would just be sitting still, like looking out into the sky. And they're like, why are you so mad? And I'm like, I'm not mad. And it programmed me to start smiling, right? To over smile, to smile harder, to have to raise the corners of my mouth, even when I was in a resting position, to raise my eyebrows, to raise my eyes a bit, to lift those muscles of my face so that I never looked angry, And I think these are really subtle things that as neurodivergent people, our bodies start to acclimate to the ways that ableist people read our disabilities as some type of affront or as some type of way of us being resentful or angry. And I, again, not diagnosed as autistic, but I also do know that a lot of these sentiments and experiences, they reach across so many different forms of neurodivergence that so many of us, especially as Black neurodivergent people, so many of us share these experiences, and it ends up leaving us feeling very isolated.
Yeah.
This podcast is supported by generous donations from our patrons and listeners. Become a supporter today by heading to www.patreon.com/colorcombosmedia.
You can stream the show on iTunes, Spotify, Stitcher, Google Podcasts, and SoundCloud. When you listen, please consider hitting that heart button, sharing, giving us a 5-star rating, and leaving some dope comments. This helps us with our page rankings and gets more listeners for the show. Thank you so much.
We're back.
We are back.
And it's time for the conversation. As always, my favorite segment of all the segments, because I love to converse. I love to get deep into the weeds on shit.
Yeah.
I love to spout off a whole bunch of numbers.
As we should.
Because I think the numbers matter.
They absolutely do.
And they matter when we talk about Black autistic people as well.
Yes.
And so let's do it.
Okay.
I just want to say, I spent a good amount of time researching this again because we are not experts.
Yes.
And the last thing I want to do is get up here on this podcast and sound like a dumbass.
Yes.
And talk straight out of my ass when I don't know what the fuck I'm talking about. So I definitely did some research to make sure we could foreground this conversation appropriately.
And center Black autistic people.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And so when it comes to autism, the actual autism diagnosis for decades was really only given to kids who had severe problems, severe communication issues, severe socializing issues, a lot of repetitive behaviors, things like that. That was for decades. It was only people who had things that were really super noticeable that were actually getting diagnosed.
Pronounced symptoms.
Right. And so there just wasn't a lot of work or effort to really look at anybody else, right? It was kind of like we're gonna attack the problem as it presents itself to us, as opposed to being a little bit more proactive,
right? And
really actually go out here and diagnose kids that might need our help,
right?
So about 30 years ago, the term autism really became kind of like a shorthand, and it really refers to, as you were just talking about, neurodivergency being an umbrella.
Right.
Autism really refers to a spectrum of different disorders. It's called the Autism Spectrum Disorder spectrum. Shorthand is ASD. And it's usually meant for people who have issues with social communication, and they have restrictive or repetitive behaviors or interests. Right. So a lot of times, and this is also really, I think, a lot of times attributed to people with any type of neurodivergency, is they'll remark that they have almost like a superpower.
Yeah.
Right. they might seem like what the world would call weird, right? Like I said, they might have like repetitive behaviors or something, or they might be like really incredibly socially awkward. But then you sit them in front of a piano at 5 and they're playing
right.
concertos, right? Like you're like, how the fuck did you do that, right? And that's I think when society thinks about what autism looks like, it's someone like that.
Yeah,
right? I think that's the general way that we kind of view things. When you think about testing, right, it's not a blood thing. It's not a genetic thing. There's no biological test. It's really only judged by making by taking account of someone's behavior.
Right.
That's how you can diagnose someone with autism.
Yeah.
Right. And so it's not like we can say, oh, every baby that's born, we're gonna run a test on you and we'll just check the box for autistic or not.
Right.
Like this is something where you actually have to pay attention.
Yeah.
And I think that's also part of the reason why sometimes people don't get diagnosed.
Right.
Right. Because it's like, who's around them.
Right. And are they attributing that to something that could be a disability, or are they just saying, oh, that's just how so-and-so is? Right. Or are they undermining it completely?
Exactly. And to be honest, we know in the Black community,
I got a lot to talk about with that.
We real good with that.
I got a lot to talk about with that.
But just really quickly, just to kind of relate like how common autism is. So what happens is now when it comes to testing, the CDC checks the health and school records of 11 states, and focusing on 8-year-olds, because most kids are being diagnosed by that age, right? And again, right, when you're thinking about social disorders, things like that, you really want to catch it early on,
right?
Not when someone's an adult,
right?
In 2020, 1 in 36 8-year-olds had autism.
That's really common.
That is up from 1 in 44 just 2 years earlier.
Wow.
Right. So again, we're seeing when we do a better job of testing, look, we're picking up on more people.
Right.
Right. In 2023, new estimates suggest that about 3% of Black, Hispanic, and Asian or Pacific Islander children have an autism diagnosis, compared with just 2% of white kids. Still, according to a 2020 study on the timing of diagnosis of autism, this was one of the largest studies to date on this specific topic.
Yeah.
Black children on average don't get diagnosed with autism until 3 years after their parents have initially voiced concern to the pediatrician.
Wow.
Many parents have reported that the pediatrician has been dismissive or quick to blame disruptive behaviors on poor parenting or harmful stereotypes.
Wow.
Now, I just want that to hang in the air for a
moment,
right?
Yeah.
Like we just said, Black people are real good at saying, oh, that's just how so-and-so is, or they're just a bad kid, they just don't listen, whatever it is. We're now talking about parents that looked at their kid and said, actually, something might be off here. Yeah. Right. And remember, a lot of Black and brown people don't have access to healthcare as easily as a lot of people. Right. Right. Even then, after that, we're now saying those people then took their child to a pediatrician and said, hey, can you check my child out?
Just to be sure.
You know, they got this weird repetitive thing that they just do all day. Or, you know, in these social situations, they're really, really struggling. It's causing a lot of issues at school. And the pediatrician basically said, there's nothing, they'll grow out of it. Right. Is it something you're doing at home? Is there something going on at home? Right. All of these things, again, it's actual just racism.
Until the third time, right? You said the third time?
No, I said 3 years after.
Oh, 3 years.
So imagine you're 8-year-old. You're like, something is up.
Right.
I've been noticing the last couple of years, you know, let me take them to the doctor. And it's not until they're 11.
Can you imagine that?
Someone says, you know what, your child's autistic.
In any other situation, if it took 3 years to get a diagnosis, we would be burning this shit down.
And honestly, when you think about it, again, this is something that impacts people's social interactions. It could impact how they learn.
Their grades, yeah.
Right? And that's 3 years.
Their friendships.
Can you imagine being that parent and being like, wow, I would have done the last 3 years completely differently.
Yeah.
If y'all had listened
if I had the
to
services
me
to support my child
when I said it the first time.
Wow.
I just want, like I said, I just want to foreground this conversation about being Black and autistic in all of those stats, just to say, you know, we're doing better with testing. We're picking up more people, especially more non-white people that might be autistic and getting them tested, right? And getting that done earlier on in life. But I want to really, as you remember, all of those dates that I just said were 2020 or later.
Really recent.
So this is only in the last couple of years.
Right.
Think about 20 years ago.
Right.
Think about 30, like, this is a lot of time lost. And it's a lot of people misdiagnosed, not diagnosed, left to just kind of find their way without getting the support that they really deserve and need.
That's awful. That's awful. And so I want to talk about this from the perspective of institutions and the school to prison pipeline and the ways that schools participate in the kind of delayed diagnoses and stigmatizing of children with autism. So I think we've talked about this a bit before, but there are schools, especially like in Maryland and in the Midwest, that still connect mental health issues with young people to the carceral state. Mm-hmm. So rather than providing social work or other type of counseling care in schools, licensed therapists, folks like that, they will just send kids to the police. They will literally just handcuff children and send them to the police, and the police will escort them sometimes in an ambulance to an emergency room or hospital. There will be some type of sterilizing environment that they will be introduced to that's outside of their school to essentially scare them out of whatever mental health concerns or issues they may be having. So think about it this way. If someone's having a episode at school, a panic attack, anxiety attack, or some other type of issue with relation to their mental health diagnoses, or the fact that there might not be a diagnosis, and they have this ongoing repetitive action or things that teachers feel to be, a consequence of their personal behavioral choices, as opposed to their disability. They are not talked to by people who are trained in trauma-informed care. They are not offered services in schools where they feel safe with people they recognize. They are shipped away to places where adults go to receive services that they have to be contractually obligated to receive. Mm-hmm. And I bring this up to suggest that part of the issue that we have with the lack of diagnoses of autism in our community is that it takes so many of us until we are in our adult years to be in a safe place to even get the diagnoses, right? Because if you exhibit any form of issue with your mental capacity as a child, it is dangerous for us, right? It can absolutely end up in teachers who are, we know, overrepresented by white women in the U.S. There's an overrepresentation of white women in service that has to do with teaching, education, social services. So when we have young people, Black children, Black and brown children who have undiagnosed autism, who are moving through schools, they are also having to work to comport themselves so that these people, these women, don't see them as a deviant, as a criminal, as someone who is liable, right? And I worry sometimes, right, that, and this is going to take a little bit of a turn, but I was on Instagram and someone posted and they said, I'm 31, but I'm gay. And due to gay, I lost so much of my formative years, which makes me 23. And I said, oh, well, if that's the math, then I'm 29. And I've been thinking a lot about what that means in terms of our experiences with undiagnosed disabilities and what that means for so many of us who have had to walk around neurodivergent and trying to figure out how to person around so many able-bodied people who are ableist, who call us weird, who say that we don't do things normal. Why don't you talk like us? Why don't you do this like this? Why do you do these things? That's so strange, right? And we lose so much time because of the psychic energy that you have to spend trying to figure out how to be like them.
And the other thing, right? I'm probably going to say this 10 more times today, but remember, we're talking about people being autistic, but also people being Black.
Right.
So you think about, as a Black person navigating the world, all the things that you have to be aware of, all the social norms you have to watch out for, the social cues you got to be aware of to literally keep yourself alive.
Right.
Now, couple that with the fact that you just have a natural propensity to not understand social cues.
You're right. To not pick up on the same social cues that other people do.
And then, as you said, then people bring it up and say, "Oh, you're not picking up the stuff like everybody else, and you don't get the actual diagnosis."
Right? Maybe it's because you're angry. Maybe it's because you're just a bad kid.
So you don't get the support, you don't get the care, you don't get the coping mechanisms and things that you would need.
Then you're defiant.
Right.
Then you're defiant. Then it's you breaking the rules. right? And I bring this up all the time as someone who got kicked out of elementary school. People are always like, you got kicked out of elementary school? Mm-hmm. And I'm like, I absolutely did. I could not figure out how to comport myself at this predominantly white Catholic school. They wanted a behavior out of this body of mine that I could not provide them. And now that I've been diagnosed with CTPSD, anxiety, and depression, I'm like, oh, well, yeah, that makes sense.
Makes a lot of sense.
That makes a lot of sense. Right? So I think the other side of this diagnosis conversation, right, is that we have to also be very, very sensitive to the ways that these institutions that we are obligated to participate in, that we have no choice but to attend because it's the law, right? That we have to understand that they are also working actively to criminalize, to deviantize, and to undermine our own safety, right? Like we are not, when we say, well, Black people good for this, like that's not the responsibility of Black people alone, right? It's not as if Black folk are unilaterally deciding, well, we don't want to get diagnosed with all the disabilities and concerns that are affecting our bodies, right? We know that there's a long history of Western medicine that has actively worked to ensure that Black people do not have access to the services that they need, the medical services that they need. But in this specific case, right, there is a fear, right? When the sterilizing environment of the hospital is so closely related to the sterilizing environment of the jail cell, there is a fear about being seen as both Black and mentally disabled. Mm-hmm. The Black Panthers wrote about this at length. This is one of the things that the Black Panthers were concerned about. They were concerned about the ways that if we didn't take up the issue of mental health, that was going to be the thing that they used to say that our movements weren't worth anything, that we were simply out of our minds, right? That we couldn't adhere to a status quo because we had a deficiency. And they cited issues like, the phrenology, right? The ways that these white pseudoscientific methods, the bell curve, right? These goals of trying to take the Black skull and body and try and figure out how to measure the body to show how we were inferior to white Americans. When none of that was true. None of that was based in real science. I think all the time about when I read about the Mississippi Delta and they would actually try and figure out if Black people had the same lung capacity as white people. And the way they did it was they said, I'm going to go up to the slaves who are actually in the field working right now in the hot sun in the Mississippi Delta and use my instruments to take the readings for their lung capacity. And then I'll go measure the white people who are sitting in the house in the shade, drinking lemonade and using the slaves as furniture. See, the white people have more lung capacity. Don't you think maybe that's because
the science is unsound?
They not out there out of breath in the field, fool? You see what I'm saying? That's what we have to also combat. We have to also combat that these systems don't want us diagnosed because that's empowering. And that puts us in a position to actually own ourselves and to take control of our lives.
And the thing about it is, this is not theory. Like, we're not just saying, oh, well, I theorize that if you're Black and autistic, it might be harder to navigate and that, these systems might kind of work against you. No, this is it's fact. Real. Like, the police will often interpret anyone with like mental health issues as just extra aggressive.
That's correct.
Or more like a criminal.
They have absolutely shot people who were not able to speak back to them because they thought that they were being defiant.
Yeah, it's sad, very sad.
Yes,
but people get killed.
Yes,
there's a higher rate of incarceration for Black individuals that are on the autistic spectrum.
Yeah,
right. This is not just theoretical. This is actual real life. This is what is happening currently today, every single day. And clearly, like I said, we're doing better with diagnosing. We're doing better with identifying people at an earlier age. But that doesn't change all the things that I just listed. All the things that you just said. That doesn't change that. It just gives these people maybe a little bit better of a chance of being able to navigate and avoid and dodge these dangerous situations in dangerous institutions.
I want to raise one more name. And this is a murder that the Chicago police committed when we were living in Chicago in 2015. This young man, he was 19 years old. His name was Quintonio LeGrier. Mm-hmm. And his father called police because he was having a mental health episode. And we don't know what his mental health issue was. He was undiagnosed. And I believe it was Christmas Eve. And his dad called and said, I need some help. So the police came in to the apartment building. And when they came in downstairs, another neighbor named Betty Jones, an older black woman, opened her door just to see who had come barreling into the apartment. And the first thing they did was shot her and killed her on Christmas. They killed her, 51 years old, I believe, killed Betty Jones, then went up the stairs and killed Quintonio LeGrier. That was their response to a mental health call. They killed a woman downstairs who just was looking out to see who was in the hallway and killed a 19-year-old boy. That is why this is a major issue.
Wow. It's ridiculous. But to be honest, I don't want to be all doom and gloom, right? But the way that we make this better, because I'm sure that's where everyone's head at. It's after all of this. It's like, how do we fix this? How do we get it better? We get it better by paying attention and loving and caring for the people around us, identifying when they might have some type of issue, getting them diagnosed, getting them the care and support that they need. And then also, as we've said, a lot of this stuff is institutional.
Yeah.
So we have to be pushing back against these institutions. We have to reform these institutions. We have to dismantle these institutions.
And believe people. Believe people.
Yeah, and that's the other thing, right? A lot of people don't believe kids.
They don't believe kids.
They think put them in a corner, give them a spanking.
Or they think the kid is lying. Oh, you can see that. Or you heard that. You understand what they said. Stop pretending. Stop playing. Believe children. Believe children, but also believe adults. There have been so many people in my adult life. I'm thinking about it right now. How many times I've said to someone, I don't actually understand what you're saying. And I will never forget, I was at work one time and one of my superiors, he was a very, very smart man who really respected me as an intellectual. And he looked at me and asked me why I was able to understand something intellectually, but I couldn't understand something emotionally. And I was looking at him and I'm like, this man doesn't know that I have a mental health diagnosis. And I don't feel like I should have to reveal that at work. And I don't think it's any of his business why I have a difference in the ways that I'm able to process intellectual things versus emotional things. But that is the reason why we have to understand that this is a way that people process. Someone can have a PhD and still need support when they think about how to process human emotion. Mm-hmm. Those things are not synonymous. PhD in calculus and mathematics does not mean I understand social interactions.
It just doesn't.
It just doesn't.
And the more that we understand that as a collective, the better we can work and move forward together as a community.
Right.
You can find my mom and dad, aka That Black Couple, on the web at thatblackcouple.com. That Black Couple is owned and operated by Color Combos Media. If you would like to help fund our content, sign up at www.patreon.com/colorcombosmedia. Please consider giving us $5 or $10 per month to help us build our platform and grow our organization. You can also give one-time donations at www.paypal.me/colorcombosmedia. All donations are welcome.
We're back.
We are back.
Are you ready to reflect?
Let's reflect.
Okay, so let's reflect on this episode. This was a lot. Mm-hmm. This was a lot. I would like to reflect by offering folks more resources from people who actually are diagnosed with autism and who are at the intersections of race, gender, class, and disability, and who are navigating this in real time. So I've followed a couple of handles on Twitter, on Instagram, on Facebook. And one person I really like is Dr. Sam. Her handle is _simply_SR on TikTok. And I know TikTok might be going away.
It might be gone soon, y'all.
It might be gone. But she's really, really dope. I really like her. She's a Black woman. And I've watched a lot of her videos. And she talks about the ways that people talk to her about having autism. And it really disturbs me the things people feel comfortable saying to her directly. Like, oh, explain to me why you think you have this. Or, you seem normal. You seem fine. But you're a doctor, right? And so she she has all these really informative videos about how she navigates those conversations and how she takes control of her life. There's also a Facebook page. It's called A Black Dad with Autism. I think he's also really cool. And then there's a couple people on Instagram, and there's a lot of Black community members who talk about their diagnoses with autism. But what I will also say is, like, a lot of the people, as you said earlier, Daren, a lot of them have been recently diagnosed, like within the last maybe 2 to maybe 4 years. And a lot of them are sharing what that's been like to be, in their 20s, 30s. Some of them are parents. Some of them have been diagnosed because their child was diagnosed. And then when their child was diagnosed, they were like, wait, that my child acts just like me. And then they were diagnosed. So I think it's really good to, reach out and see if folks can find resources, because clearly there's a community here.
Yeah, there's definitely a community.
Do your thing.
Oh, that's better. I can hear it already. Yeah, there's definitely a community around that. And I think that's a great kind of way to kind of close out the episode. I kind of feel the same way. I want to just offer places for people to go.
Yeah.
Because if you're listening and you think that you might be autistic, or you might know someone that's autistic, I'm sure you're wondering, what the hell do I do now?
Yeah.
And there's places that you can go. I think the biggest thing that you can do is try to build community and find resources. So one place I know about is called the Color of Autism Foundation. And their objective is to just give families tools to recognize the early warning signs of autism, right? So if, again, you think someone might be autistic, you think you might be autistic, there's a lot of resources that they can provide. They have things like parent education, job skills. They'll help with like adulthood transitions, right? A lot of stuff for specifically non-white people. That the Color of Autism Foundation is a great place for that. The other one that I was thinking about is called the Holly Rod Foundation, which is when I came upon it, I thought about it and I realized, it's been around for a long time and I've heard about it for a long time. And I immediately felt shame. Because this was the foundation that was started by Holly Robinson Pete and her husband.
Oh, wow.
And
yeah.
I remember, like, when I saw it, I was like, I remember when it started.
We were like in like junior high school or high school. Yeah.
But it's one of those things where it makes you realize the differing views and the evolving views on things like autism. Because at that time, it was like, oh, this is some pet project that they're doing for their own child.
Because it wasn't very common.
Right. It was not. And again, it was not common because people weren't really getting tested like they should have, right?
The 90s and early 2000s, yeah.
But they've been doing that work since then. So that's another really great resource that you can go to if you're thinking about testing, if you're thinking about trying to figure out where you can help build community, things like that. That's another really great place that you can go and get involved in or find resources from.
Dope. As always, if you have questions, comments, or concerns, or you just want to tell us how great we are, email us at thatblkcouple@gmail.com. Bye.